Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on getting employees involved in safety management and communication. This is going to be an informative hour, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but I wanted to go over a few housekeeping details before we begin. We want this to be as interactive as possible, so we have a few poll questions throughout the presentation that we'd love to get your participation. We also encourage you to ask questions throughout the webinar using the questions tab on your GoToWebinar tab over on your, what that thing's called, your little box there. And I will make sure that we get the questions addressed before we wrap up. But if I do miss a question, I will make sure that Lori gets the question and we get an answer to you as soon as possible. Also want to let you guys know that we are recording the webinar and it will be available to watch at your convenience or to share, and as well as the slides Lori will be using, and I will send out those links later this afternoon. But I want to take a minute to introduce Lori Siegelman to you all. Lori is our Senior Consultant and Director of Safety Programs here at W&M, and she has 20 years experience with implementing safety programs. So Lori, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks. Good to be here, and I appreciate all of the people who signed on to hear the webinar today.
Yeah, we're gonna have a great one. So take it away.
Okay. Well, just to get started, Jim, employee involvement and participation are key for seeing real improvement in safety performance. But really, without a framework and an underlying plan in place, there's going to be a lack of focus and no clear path for the involved and participating employees to follow. So first I want to define what is safety management, or rather safety management systems. All companies have safety management systems in some form or another. Some are just more developed and formalized than others. Some may be as simple as, everything's verbal, and they manage kind of from the seat of the pants. So that still is a way of managing the safety, even though it's not a formalized system on paper. There are many model systems out there that can be followed for companies wishing to develop the programs more fully and integrate. An integral part of the model management systems is employee involvement and participation and communication back and forth, communication between employees and the management, a two-way communication, not just from the top down. Most recently, OSHA published their Safety and Health Program Management Guidelines in a draft format for comment. I believe it's still in that comment period. It's been a couple of months now since they published that. For the OSOS 18001, for those of you who are familiar with that specification or that standard, it's currently being transitioned into a new ISO standard, 45001, for health and safety management systems, very similar to the ISO 14001 for environmental systems. These are for health and safety, but many of the elements within the management system can be combined into a system that also addresses quality and environmental as well. So if you're looking to more fully develop your system or start from the ground up, some of these model programs might be very helpful. The basic elements, though, of most management systems, whether it's a formal system or not, regardless of how many policies and procedures you have or don't have, the elements listed on the screen are the most basic and should all be there in one form or another. The leadership and employee involvement are the elements that are going to cultivate the direction and provide the motivation and driving force for the rest of the system. It's the strength here of these elements, the management, leadership, and employee involvement, that's going to determine the strength of the rest of the elements. These elements, they're not exactly what you'll find listed in the various guidelines and standards. I kind of summarized and pulled together the core elements that I think are necessary, that they capture the basics of a good safety management system or a good way to manage your safety program. You need to basically one step or many steps, but for safety you want to identify the hazards, evaluate the risks of the hazards, reduce the risks in a prioritized manner, beginning with your highest risk activities. But doing that in and of itself identifying the hazards, evaluating them, and eliminating them or reducing the risk. All of that requires leadership commitment and participation. If you want to have an effective system and really reduce your risk and improve your safety performance, you'll get employee involvement and engagement as well. So the words communicate, involved, and engaged all have different meanings, and there's different ways to make each one happen. So today I want to first discuss what's meant by management leadership and then get into the employee involvement, because one really can't happen effectively without the other. Before employees will be actively involved in the safety program, they have to be engaged and encouraged to participate, to be involved. This requires first and foremost the management leadership. It sets the stage for employee engagement, participation, and involvement. But the most important characteristic of safety excellence is going to be to provide management leadership and commitment. The leaders of the company have to demonstrate a strong, genuine, continuous commitment to safety. And notice the emphasis on genuine and also continuous. It can't just be a one-time sweep, introducing something and a big push, and then it all kind of goes away and fades into the background. First off, you want to communicate your vision. This is a demonstration of leadership commitment, a company policy statement. It's really the first step towards demonstrating that leadership commitment. It provides an opportunity to start turning things around, for assigning responsibility, for encouraging employees to participate and exchange information. The policy statement is like a pledge that the company is making to its employees, so it's really the company's responsibility to provide the content of the policy. But it is a really good beginning to start getting employees involved by asking them to help develop it or to solicit their opinion about it, at least when you're developing a policy or policy statement. Then the next step is to communicate it and implement it. So the policy is it makes a statement about your intention. You say what you're going to do to keep a safe and healthy environment for your workers and anyone else who could be affected by your work activities. So a lot of times the policy statement for a company will include the surrounding community as well, if you're a big company especially. It clearly sets out everyone's roles and responsibilities, roles for directors, supervisors, safety reps, workers, all the way down the line. It says how things will be done, what resources will be allocated to make things happen, any number of things. But all of this is, it can include a lot of different things, and a good policy statement will be beyond just a policy statement. It will be like core values and consist of a lot more like policy procedures and things like that. I know this sounds like a lot of information that goes into just a few sentences of a policy statement, but let's look at an example. So very large company, DuPont, and I know many of our listeners don't have the resources that DuPont has. They don't really have the need for a big, robust safety policy like DuPont has, but here's just an example. They have a position statement. It's published on their website, and it includes more information beyond just the simple commitment statement that's displayed on the screen here. There's also a set of core values and a sustainability commitment. A detailed safety policy is really more than just the summarized version that you often see. But if you're a really small company or a medium-sized company, it doesn't need to be all that. It really needs to be just whatever fits your company. That's the main thing. Does it represent what your company is all about? Or is it just a generic, you made up a sentence or two and kind of threw it together without much thought? So there's a difference. So the next step, once you develop your policy or your policy statement or your core values, so whatever that's going to be, the next step would be getting your policy out there, communicating the policy. And remember, this is still in setting the stage for turning around your safety performance, beginning of changing your culture where you want the employees to start feeling part of the safety program. So part of a successful policy is ensuring that all of the employees are aware of it, so communicate it. If the workplace's plan for implementing the policy is a good one, employees may be reminded about it in their day-to-day activities. You talk about it or publish it in the safety meeting minutes, or talk about it during the safety meetings, during new employee orientation, during training programs or all employee meetings. And also a responsibility to adhere to the policy may be oftentimes integrated into the employee's job description or into a new employee handbook or something of that nature. So each employee, when they hire on, they're given a copy of the policy. They understand that it's a condition of employment to follow the policy, and then reinforcing its commitment to the policy is done by maybe signs posted on bulletin boards or articles that are in the company newsletter, in job manuals, things like that. So each company undoubtedly will have its own way of keeping its employees informed, and that's going to depend upon how many employees you have and what your typical communication avenues are. But the important thing is to have a plan and to follow through on it. So I know one way I've seen at a larger company, when you have a lot of employee badges, for instance, you can fit the policy statement or a little summary of the policy statement on the back of the employee badges or the back of business cards that you can hand out or on newsletters. Just a couple of ideas. And then another thing that's kind of setting the stage for developing your employee participation and engagement is having clearly defined roles and responsibilities. It helps pave the way to having a culture where employees feel valued and like their input matters. In order to effectively manage your staff as well, it's important to provide them with a clear definition and understanding of what their role is, what is their function, and what are their responsibilities to get the product out, to follow the rules, to have a good quality service or product, as well as safety. So role safety right in with all of the other roles and responsibilities that employees have. It can help them understand the job or the task that they're expected to perform as an individual and within any team that they're part of. It provides information on where they fit within the organization, who they report to, and it can help avoid disputes and misunderstandings. A job description is an excellent, and it's also the most common way to do this, to define a role and responsibility. So many, if not most of you on the webinar today, probably already have job descriptions in place at your company, but do they address the safety aspect of the job specifically? Or are they used to measure the performance against the tasks or the requirements? Say, for instance, for a supervisory role, the job description, does it have anything like supervisors will perform accident investigations for incidents happening within their area of responsibility? And then during their performance review, is that performance graded or looked at all? Are they held accountable to that role? So let's get more specific on what's meant by setting roles and responsibilities. The senior manager on site, that could be the plant manager, the division director, the president, whoever that top person or persons, you might have a team of people, their role is to set the policy, to set the goals for the organization, the targets. They have the final say over budgets, the final say over hiring or firing employees. For a committed senior manager or management who embraces his role as setting the tone for the company, safety is going to be integrated into the business. So any discussions that senior manager or those senior management personnel have about performance of the company is going to include current progress towards safety targets and goals right alongside of quality and profitability and production schedules. That senior manager is going to provide sufficient resources that allows and even encourages to be participating and actively involved in the safety program, like sitting on safety committees, participating in non-compliance required training like incident investigation techniques or hazard recognition. So you see, without management leadership component of the safety program and without the senior manager clearly understanding his role within that program, there may not be that opportunity given or that willingness on the employee's part for them to get involved. And so without this step, getting employee involvement is going to be really difficult.
Lori, would this be a good time to launch our first poll question?
Sure.
Okay, so does your company have a general policy statement reflecting management's commitment to safety? And the answers are yes, no, I think we do, but I haven't seen it, or they say they do. So go ahead and take a second to cast your vote, and I'll give you guys the results in a few minutes. I wonder if okay, there they go. They weren't showing right away, but now we got it going. Give it a few more seconds. Okay, Lori, it looks like 94% of our listeners right now are, I should share, they do have a safety general policy statement in place.
Well, good. Then most of our listeners then have a company that probably has a well-developed safety program and may not need all of this information, but hopefully I'll be able to share at least some tips or some more specifics about how they might improve what they already have. So getting back to roles and responsibilities, so beyond the senior manager or senior management in the policy statements, we're still talking about kind of setting that stage and making it a culture where employees feel comfortable and are expected to participate. And along the lines of roles and responsibilities, then you have that middle layer of management, your line managers. They're the people out there that you're tasked with actually implementing the safety program. They're the foremen, the supervisors, whatever terminology is used for your specific company, the people that we expect to lead the workers to get the job done. They're the ones we expect to investigate accidents, enforce the rules, coordinate worker training, among other things. These items are written into their job description. So I'm asking for a well-developed safety program at a company. You would have a job description or some other means to formally put down the expectations and the responsibilities of these type of individuals. During their performance review then are these items discussed, and I already talked a little bit about the importance of this, but you have a job description that can be very generic, and most of the ones I see are extremely generic and don't have any very specific responsibilities integrated within it, or specific targets for accomplishing the tasks. Are they defined, and then do you follow up with some accountability for that? And on the screen I have some of the things that a supervisor type or line manager might be responsible for doing. And here are more specific examples of things that might be included in a job description, and maybe it's not a job description per se, but some other mechanism to let each individual manager, line manager, foreman, whatever, know that these are the expectations for that role. Very specific things that can be integrated. There are responsibilities that are understood, and then they can be used for accountability. Again, without this foundation, getting employees' participation and involvement is going to be difficult. These types of things, they'll help demonstrate that management is committed to safety, that it's important to the managers, the senior managers, the middle managers, the line managers. So employees then feel like it's important enough for them to take part and put forth effort. If the employee's perception is that safety isn't as important as production or quality, then they're less likely to dedicate any of their time and energy into problem solving or participating in the safety program. Some specific ideas for communicating to employees that safety is important are listed here. These are specific targets that can be used for accountability as well. For instance, the senior manager might send out safety information in the form of company bulletins, newsletters, video messages, town hall meetings. Maybe he comes to the Toolbox Talk meeting, say, once a month or once a quarter or once a week to kind of get that two-way communication going, or that perception that the employees will have that he's interested in the safety. Your middle managers and supervisors, maybe they tour or do a walk around within the area of their responsibility that are very specific to safety and not just about production and quality. It's a planned and formal walkthrough that visibly supports safety. It doesn't have to be and shouldn't be a comprehensive inspection, but also it shouldn't just be an ad hoc event that's done every once in a while, not really on a schedule. And you could even use a checklist during the walkthrough, maybe a list of accidents that have happened in the past week or the past month, changes in production or changes in equipment or personnel, new processes, or problem areas. Now we get down to the role and responsibility of the individual employees. So we're a little closer to that, how do you get them to participate and how do you get their involvement? The absolute minimum level of participation is normally what I see is for employees to attend the required training. And by employees in this sense, I mean managers and supervisors all the way, whatever required training, like compliance required training, follow the rules and procedures, and they report incidents and hazards. So many management systems call for employee participation, and a big one is that OSHA VPP program. And that participation can be as simple and as minimal as attending training. That is an acceptable method of participation for employees. But remember, participation is not the same thing as involvement. And that's where a good, strong safety program is different. Its employees are actively involved. They don't just simply participate. And here on the screens are some examples of how employees can become and are actively involved in the safety program. Some of them are minimal. They report the hazards. They follow the rules. And some go beyond that minimal participation into an active involvement, like they assist in workplace inspections, or they participate on committees, and they may even help implement some of the safety programs like job hazard assessments. Involved employees know that they're held accountable as well. So this accountability is really key. If you don't set goals and targets and things for employees to shoot for, this includes managers and supervisors, and then hold them accountable, grade them somehow on that performance, then the whole thing starts to fall apart. Employee performance in the workplace is a subject that it can be evaluated in a multitude of different ways. It's easier if there's performance standards, and it gets back to the roles and responsibilities. So you define clearly what each person's responsibility is. You set performance standards. So if one of the responsibilities is to, say, workplace inspections, a supervisor is supposed to conduct a workplace inspection, then set a performance standard. They're to do an inspection once a week. They're to document the inspection on a checklist. They're to close out findings from inspections, within some set period of time. So set some standards there, and then during a performance review, somehow reward that employee for doing what his responsibility is, and for doing that well. If employees know what their role is, then performance standards are set, then they feel more confident about the expectations. And if one of those expectations is active participation, that kind of will get the ball rolling and measure the employee's performance, provide some mechanisms to evaluate their achievements and their effectiveness, and make adjustments as necessary. So it can be a tool to increase their overall productivity, their overall engagement, and active involvement in the safety program. So you can't really expect employees to meet expectations if you don't clearly define what those responsibilities are, and then if you don't hold them accountable, again, then the whole thing starts to fall apart. There's many types of accountability systems, but the key is that all the managers and employees know that they're being evaluated on the effectiveness of how they carry out their responsibilities. And then the performance standards that say what is to be done, who is going to do it, when and how often will it be done. And that's the type of performance standard that will best, you can really look at somebody's performance if you have told them ahead of time what's going to be done, who's going to do it, and when and how often. Another major component of this management commitment that's going to demonstrate the importance of safety to the employees is the allocation of resources. This resources isn't just a budget. It can be people, allowing, and this is the thing I see most often is not in place, allowing workers time off of production to participate in some type of safety activity beyond required training. Either a safety committee, some special training like incident investigation or hazard recognition, or on special projects like you want them to help with job hazard assessments. Another way of resources or allocating resources is hiring outside help or expertise when you need it. Budgeting specifically for safety in terms of PPE and equipment, facility repairs, modifications, all of those things. But it should be commensurate with your company. What are your needs? If you're a very small company with few employees, it simply could be assigning collateral duties across a few different employees for safety, providing the appropriate level of training to carry out those responsibilities, and then budgeting a little bit for PPE and preventive maintenance. But what will you direct your resources toward? If you have to have some way to decide what your priorities are and how you allocate resources toward those priorities. So we get into kind of the one of the final foundations of a management system, so you can kind of elicit employee involvement to make some progress. I mean, the key thing here is safety performance improvement. So you're building your safety program from the ground up, or maybe you just want to turn things around, or if probably like most of our our listeners here, if you already have a fairly good, solid safety program, you simply want to increase your performance, kind of get that employee input and get the benefit of their knowledge. So you want to tap into the knowledge and the other resources that employees can contribute to making that happen. You need to be able to,
I'm sorry, you tell me when we can launch the next poll question. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, yeah, so you want to assess your workplace for hazards. That's the final cornerstone for setting up a strong program where employees will feel valued and willing to become actively involved. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to launch. Question, is there a specific safety budget set at your company? Please select one. So we have a much wider range of answers this time. I'll let it go for a few more seconds. Okay, I'll go ahead and close this and I'll share the results. So it looks like 31% actually do have a safety budget. 44% do not. 13 say they think they have one, but they don't know what it is, and the other 13 says they don't think we have one. So I would say if you don't think you have one, you probably don't. What is your thoughts, Lori?
You know, I don't know. I know that I've been audited in the past on management systems and inspected by regulators, and they all want to look at that budget. And personally, I never had a line item for a budget. And at the time, that was viewed as a negative thing. But really, the budget was integrated like a good safety program should be. It was integrated with the rest of the business. So it was a little harder to distinguish and be able to point to a line item that says, here's the safety budget, because it was integrated to all of the rest of the business and the rest of the divisions. And this was the case in 2 or 3 different companies that I had worked for. So while I really don't think we can say if you don't have a safety budget, you know, it's a bad thing. It could be you don't have that line item there, but you still have a budget. It's just not in that format that you can point to and say, here it is. And on the other side of the spectrum, of course, if you don't have, it could be that, you know, don't have a budget because they don't want you to spend any money. So it really depends on the company. But the point is resources. Whether that resource is, it should be a combination of financial resources to purchase the things you need to have to work safely, and then more importantly, the allocation of resources in the form of people, and allowing the people that have the most knowledge and can do the most good in the most effective manner to have a say and to let go of production for long enough to be able to provide that input. So now that we've set the stage, you have management, commitment, leadership, roles and responsibilities are defined. So you've set the stage, so to speak, and you're kind of on the right path to solicit employees to become more involved and to take an active role in the safety program. So what's next? Engaging employees. So engaging them is really the first step in gaining their willingness to get involved with the program beyond just simple participation. The policy statement provided a mechanism for engaging the employees if that policy is meaningful and if it's meaningfully communicated. Employees who are not engaged won't be good participants in further developing the program. So on the slide here, I have kind of a difference between engaged. So engaged is kind of the middle ground between they participate in a minimal level, they're engaged, they're on board and they're committed, they're taking ownership, and then to the final stage of they're involved, they're actively involved. They're willing participants in inspections, in assessments, investigations, they're reporting hazards, and they don't have a fear of reprisal. They feel like their opinions are valid and will be heard if they go to the effort to make them to the management and express their opinion. So how do you make that transition? Here's just a few pointers or tips of how to make the transition between employees that are participating and maybe engaged or beginning to be engaged. Provide opportunities for upward feedback. Are your employees afraid to talk? Are they too busy to report hazards? Provide information to them. Share safety statistics. Share lessons learned. Maybe include information in a morning pre-shift meeting about a safety topic once a week or once every 2 weeks. Feeling appreciated. Reward safety involvement. If they report a hazard, instead of rolling eyes and, oh, Larry is at it again, appreciate that and genuinely accept feedback. Your housekeeping is good. Rules are followed. So reward those types of things. When I say reward safety, that's not to say reward not having an accident. Oftentimes I see maybe divisions or different assembly lines of different parts of an organization competing with one another, or they're rewarded if they don't have any incidents that week or that month. But that's kind of a negative thing. If somebody then has an incident, they're looked upon negatively. You want to try and reward those positive, proactive behaviors like reporting hazards and providing feedback and suggestions for improvement. And then that visible, tangible management commitment that we've been talking about for the prior slides. Visible, tangible commitment. The senior manager walks the floor. He's interested in safety. The supervisors are on board, and safety is integrated into the business decisions. And then expectations are communicated. Employee involvement becomes expected. It's appreciated, and it's rewarded. Then when you move from participation to engagement and then to meaningful one, you can get sustainable performance improvement. Your non-supervisory personnel are considered to have the most intimate knowledge of the work hazards and the ways to address them. So we're finally getting to the crux of why you want employee involvement. If you want to improve your safety performance, you want to minimize or eliminate your incidents, right? You want to not have workers' comp claims. You want to save your company money. It's your non-supervisory personnel, the worker bees that are out there building the product or providing the service that are doing it day to day. Their involvement is going to be what gets you to that goal. Incorporating activities that proactively identify the hazards as an important component of an effective safety management system. You will do job safety analysis or job safety assessments, job hazard analysis, whichever term you want to you want to use. Physical hazard inspections, housekeeping inspections, safety training, safety meetings, safety observations, near misses. There's a lot of safety terminology we can throw out there. This is why it's very helpful to have these employees involved in planning and implementing your safety program. There are many areas where employees can provide that opportunity, or where employees can be provided the opportunity to be involved beyond that minimal participation. One of the most typical methods would be to establish a safety committee, and then the committee members assist with various aspects of program development, like a subcommittee or employee team can go do assessments or help train the trainer on hazard recognition and then go do inspections. Employee involvement then can play a key role in improving that safety performance, but it does take time. It takes resources away from production, so it's often perceived by management that if we're taking employees away from production, you're going to lose money, and they don't want their employees really to be involved. They want the SH manager to go do it, or they hire somebody to come in and do safety. But if you don't have that worker bee, if you don't have the people that are out doing the job involved in assessing those hazards, then you're not going to get as good of a performance improvement as you'd like to see.
Would this be a good time to launch our next poll question, Lori? Or do you want to wait one more slide?
No, this will work.
Okay, perfect. It's an easy, quick one. Do you think it's important and value added to get employees involved in assessing hazards of their work? I think I know the answer to this question. Lori, do you find it beneficial, and you might be getting to this soon, that the mindset of management and setting up a safety program where you look for things that you can improve on, like incident reporting and stuff. What about rewarding behavior when they do things right, like catch them doing things right? Have you found that that's been helpful in the past, or is that something that sounds good, but it really doesn't work in the real world?
No, that works really well, and especially for if you're trying to turn things around, and kind of historically you've had the culture where employees were, not wanting to say anything and not really interested in doing anything or doing the right thing. So if you can get your supervisors on board and your managers, and then have them rewarding that employee behavior that you want to see more of. So they reward a suggestion for improvement, for instance, or somebody reports a hazard and they reward that employee for reporting the hazard, then the other employees in the area, the ones with the bad attitude that don't want to do anything, your problem employees that you're like, yeah, put him on the safety committee and see how far you get. Those employees kind of that stand on the sideline, if they see the other ones getting rewarded, if you keep at it and keep doing it, eventually you'll turn those problem employees around as well, usually.
Okay, excellent. And I don't know if you saw the results, but everybody thinks it is a good idea, and they do think it's important and value added to get employees involved. So we have a pretty sharp crowd with us today.
Awesome. All right, so to continue on, I'm really just now to the really nitty-gritty of how to get employees involved or actively involve employees, like what might that look like. But really including worker input at every step of program design and implementation, it improves your ability to successfully identify your workplace hazards. Where are they? What's causing your hazards? It creates a sense of program ownership among your workers. It enhances their understanding of how things are working. It helps sustain the program over time. But if you've already got a program in place, right, so you've already developed the program, it's going to be difficult for you to include your workers in program development. But maybe you take part of your program, like hazard assessment, and involve them, kick off like a training of some sort, and kind of revamp the program or a piece of the program and get them involved in that kind of re-implementation, and that might help if you've got some problem workers or you're just looking for a way to further improve your program. And so I think knowledge and training, that is another really key component to employee involvement. So many times I see that a good safety program, but it's kind of on that edge. It's good, it's solid, you've got all of things in place, you're trying to solicit workers to get more involved, but there's a training piece that's missing. Your supervisors are tasked with doing incident investigations. You've got a killer incident investigation form, but you've never provided training to your supervisors on incident investigation techniques. So it might not matter that much for a simple trip and fall or whatever. You might not think it matters, but if you have properly trained people, if they know the basics and the thoughts behind a good incident investigation, then it could be your very simple incident that happened yesterday with a good, solid investigation. You might reveal some root causes that could tomorrow lead to a very catastrophic incident, and then be able to do that. So it's important that training, even if the training is very simple, straightforward, doesn't take a lot of time, it doesn't have to. Basic loss causation. This is another one I see. People with fairly strong safety programs, and the ESH manager is working really hard. But if your managers and supervisors aren't quite on board, or they're giving you a little resistance, have you thought about their training or their knowledge, increasing their knowledge on basic loss causation? What causes loss, and how much loss costs the company beyond that initial day lost or initial workers' comp claim? That iceberg, if you guys are familiar with the evident costs, I mean, you can point and say, we lost this much time, this incident cost us this much, but there's a whole, the bottom of the iceberg that's underneath the ocean that you can't see, the soft costs, so to speak. So there's a lot of sources for training I've seen out there. The best one I've seen so far, or the most comprehensive and easiest for somebody to, or a company to take on, would be the National Safety Council Supervisor Development Training in a modular format that you can kind of pick and choose who does what. You can train your supervisors, it can help train your committees on workplace inspections, incident investigation, all kinds of different things. There's OSHA training centers all over the country, here in the Dallas area, especially over at UTA and at Peaks. You have trainings there. Really, they're a wide variety, plus all kinds of web-based online training these days. So provide training, provide information, sharing relevant safety and health information with your workers. It will foster trust. It'll help your organization make more informed safety and health decisions if you're keeping track of these things. What do your inspection reports look like? What are your incident investigation results and lessons learned? So there's a lot of different things, information you can look at and review and share with your employees. Here's some more specific information about tracking and posting injuries and illnesses. Most people do that. Exposure monitoring, if you do some air sampling or noise monitoring, that's required. Not necessarily to post it, but to communicate it to the employees. But what about hazards and near misses? What hazards were identified? What was the control for that hazard? What did you guys do about it? What was your corrective action closure rate? So if you do a suggestion program or hazard recognition program, think about posting information about how quickly things were corrected, what was done to correct it. And that fosters that sense of, yeah, they really care about safety. They really care about hazards, and if I see this over in the corner, I really should say something. It provides that opportunity and encourages employees to speak up and get more involved. And so I mentioned safety committees before. A lot of people have safety committees. I've seen a lot of times safety committees just come in and gripe and complain about different things. They don't really have good focus. They don't really have good priority. on what they're supposed to do. But if it's a well-defined responsibilities for the safety committee, there's a lot of guidance out there and books and chapters and books that you can get a good, effective safety committee in place. It's appropriate for a larger workplace, maybe not so much for a small company. But for larger workplaces where day-to-day communication with all employees is difficult, safety committee might be a good idea. Representatives from each functional area or each division, both managerial, maybe supervisory, and the employee. But be sure to have well-defined function and agenda, and that will.
Lori, it sounds like we might have lost you. We'll give her a few minutes to see if she can come back. This should be a good time to, if anybody has any questions, we can, you can send them over using your go to webinar window. And
Lance, you can't hear me?
There we go. Okay, now you're back.
Ah, I'm back. Okay. So we talked about safety committees. Did you guys hear that, Lance, or did we lose?
I think we lost you right as you were bringing up some people have safety committee, and then you went MIA. So welcome back.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. But so safety committees, they're useful for larger workplaces where day-to-day communication with all employees is difficult. But the key to having an effective safety committee is going to have well-defined agenda, well-defined responsibilities. So what is their task? What is their goal? And then a lot of times people or companies will rotate membership on the committee. So it's not just the same employees over and over and over again. That can be good and that can be bad. If you're having your safety committee do incident investigations or job hazard assessments or hazard recognition, again, back to the training, you should be sure to provide the training for whatever you're expecting your committees to do. Effective committees, they're going to have a budget, establishes parameters for the committee, should operate within whatever budget, or maybe not if there's no financial aspect to it. But communicate whatever expectations to the committee so everybody's on the same page with that. So finally, to kind of round out this this presentation, I want to just talk about a little bit of a case study or one particular company that I had the opportunity to help them with some things a few years ago.
And it looks like we're having more technical difficulties. I apologize for the delay, but I'm going to give her a few minutes to see if she can come back online, or if not.
Hello?
There you are. Thank goodness. I was about to have to continue with myself.
That is so weird because I'm just not doing anything here. Okay. Yeah, let me know if I drop out again. But I wanted just to talk about the case study. A company I had an opportunity to work with a few years ago. Their high production facility, 150 employees, they had a bad safety record. Production was down, and they kind of turned things around in a really short period of time by implementing lean manufacturing, and they integrated safety right into it. But the key thing is they integrated ownership and accountability culture right from the get-go, and within, say, I think a year or less, they had this result, this performance improvement on the screen. They reduced some personnel requirements, they increased their productivity, a tremendous reduction in safety incidents and workers' comp costs. And how they did that, they started with the beginning. First, everybody had responsibility. It was clearly defined in job descriptions. They set the performance standards. So let's just take the forklift operator. It was very clearly relayed to him your responsibilities from a safety standpoint is you will inspect your vehicle daily, you'll wear your seatbelt, you'll drive at speeds, and you will have no rider. So it's very simple expectations. They made it visual. They posted something in the area that reminded, here's the guidelines for forklift operators. The supervisor would purposefully look at and review the forklift operator and make sure he was doing everything he was supposed to do. The senior manager of the facility did daily walks and kind of reviewed everybody. Were they doing what they were expected to be doing? And so they established rules for all activities and tasks throughout the workplace. They communicated all of that to everybody. They posted things in work areas. Everybody was properly trained. So it took a little while to get to this point, but after a few months, they had everybody kind of trained up, everybody on board with what they were supposed to do. But then they started rewarding that good behavior, and Lance, you had asked that question earlier, rewarding the behavior. So if the senior manager did a walkthrough of the area and observed the employees of the area were all following the rules, the supervisor had fulfilled his responsibility, then they would get, yes, that's a good thing. They ended up doing some kind of a a raffle system where every time you were, for every day or every week, you went that week or that day and you did good. You followed your rules. You weren't observed not following the rules. Then your name was put in the hat for that drawing. And so then they had a drawing once a month or maybe once a quarter, but it was a drawing for like a TV or a stereo system, so kind of big things. But you got your name put in the hat for that drawing for every day you followed the rule, or for every hazard you reported, or for every suggestion you provided. So that rewarding good behavior, rewarding behaviors that you want to see in that very visible way. So even your grumpy guy, that stays on the fringes and doesn't want to get involved and doesn't want to see things changed, even he sees everybody else getting all these rewards and pats on the back and raises or whatever. Eventually he's going to get pulled in as well. And they were able to turn their safety program and their production and really the whole business around within a really short time frame, just from an accountability, rewarding, making things accountable, setting clear expectations, and then rewarding that. And that is the end of my presentation.
Well, great. Well, I will launch our last poll question here. Sorry, hold on. Another technical difficulty. There we go. I have to push the right button. Do employees of your company, particularly the production employees or laborers, feel comfortable raising safety issues? Yes or no? Interesting. Okay, Lori, well, it looks like right now 73% say yes, then 27% say no. So if we were talking to the no's here, what would you suggest to help people just feel comfortable? What would be the first thing that they would do to help get those people more comfortable saying, hey, raising your hand and saying, what would be the first thing that they would say?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that my initial few slides that talked about, you really have to have genuine commitment to safety from your supervisors. And oftentimes I see that the senior leaders on site, they're kind of all about safety, but they say it, but they don't really, they're not out there. They say they want it, but when the push comes to shove, the production wins. And the message they send to the supervisors is really all about production, and then the supervisors do the same thing. And so you don't really have the comfort level that's being generated there by the management and the supervisors, because they're really not there yet. So you really have to work on that leadership commitment thing first before you're going to get a comfort level from the employees, I think.
Okay, well, terrific. Lori, thank you so much for your time and your presentation. As you guys can see, there's Lori's contact information. So if you have any questions on specifically getting a program in place, or just having a question on, hey, how do I do this? Or, hey, I have an employee that just will not buy into it, I'm sure Lori would be happy to answer your questions. I will, like I said before earlier, I will be getting the recording on the presentation on our website this afternoon, and I will be sending you guys the link as well as the presentation slides. And thank you so much, Lori. Thank you again for taking the time out for us today.
Yeah, thanks everybody for spending your lunch hour.
Okay, thank you guys. Have a great day. Bye.